Welcome back to the Rub Some Dirt On It podcast. I'm your host, Coach Brian, and today I have a very special guest, Coach Tanner Bronson, who is the assistant men's basketball coach for the University of South Carolina and Max and Otto's dad. So I'm excited to get to talk to him about youth sports. Of course, that's what we do here, and then also a little insight into the basketball recruiting world that, with youth sports, we always are trying to see what's going to take our kids hopefully to the next level, and we have someone who's actually inside that game. So Tanner, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So excited that you're here. I have been very blessed to have some outstanding guests so far in this new podcast world for this show, and to have someone who is literally in the trenches of college basketball all the time. It's a really pleasure to talk to you about that. And so thanks again for being here.
No, I'm excited about it. I mean, it's cool for me too, because obviously as a parent and in the profession, and kind of we see what it looks like on the 19, 20, 20-year-olds, where a lot of, parents want their kids to be able to play sports in college. It's kind of good to be able to kind of see what that looks like. And
yeah, it's kind of like, we don't want to put too much pressure on the kids to do that, right? But at the same time, every parent is hoping the glory of having their kids play college sports, and even further if God willing. But that's the motivation, whether you like it or not. I think people are afraid to admit that. But why do we have our kids playing sports? Yes, there are so many things you can learn from: team building, competition, how to deal with that, winning and losing, fighting through adversity. All that stuff is great. And at the same time, we want them to play college sports.
It's a natural feeling for any parent. Obviously, you're watching your kid go through it. You want them to do well. You get excited when they're good at something. So there is always that end game. I kind of have a unique experience. I did play college basketball. I kind of went through it. And then as a coach, I didn't have kids. And then you have kids, and the perspective changes on what that looks like versus the kids you've been recruiting and dealing with at our level.
How has your perspective changed on that?
Well, I think it's always easy to kind of stay neutral when you don't have kids. You're like, well, as a parent, you should do this. As a parent, you should do that. And then you have kids, and it's not that easy. It's one of the hardest jobs to do, honestly, because you get challenged in a lot of different areas, and you want what's best for them, and you also don't want to put too much pressure on them, and you're trying to balance all these different things, what is good versus how they're going to feel about it. And I think that's a big challenge.
So we get a lot of baseball talk on this podcast so far. It's kind of baseball season. So I always get excited when I have a non-baseball person in. So having someone that plays basketball in the basketball world, I'm very curious about that recruiting process. Like, how do you get from high school, being recruited in high school, into a major college program? Because what I want to do is kind of work this conversation in reverse. Like, let's start out if most people's goal is to get to be a Division I athlete.
Yeah.
And then let's talk backwards to what we deal with on a daily basis with our kids and trying to help them grow and play.
Well, I think the first thing is the way it's set up nowadays, it's hard to miss. So very few kids slip through the cracks. So if you're, for instance, if your child's not getting recruited or whatever, they're being seen by a lot of different people. Doesn't mean that they don't have a chance to. But eventually we're going to see the best of the best. So from our perspective, when we go out and we have a lot of, the people that see the kids the most are going to be these AAU coaches in these programs with these travel teams. And then they're going to recruit those kids to come play for them. And then we typically go to watch those teams because they've pulled the best of the best. And in any area, there's probably 3 or 4 teams that they could go to. So it's hard. That's why I say it's hard to be missed, because they're taking the top talent out of each area, right? And so I think that's how we end up seeing them probably for the first time, is our relationships with these people at these, going to these events, seeing some of these kids. And it typically doesn't happen until sophomore, junior, more likely junior into your senior year, where we actually see them and they're on our radar.
Oh, really? Okay. So do you interact more with the AAU coaches or high school coaches?
Both. I think the AAU coaches kind of can see all the kids. But you have good relationships with high school coaches, and they might say, hey, I've got a player coming up that you should probably take a look at. We have our varsity team camp, for example. Teams come from all over the state and North Carolina, some in Georgia, to come play and get seen by us. It's an opportunity for us to connect with the coaches, see some of the players that way.
A little showcase?
Yeah. But then when we go out to these events, we get ideas and we kind of mark them down. We might follow them a little bit, kind of see what that looks like moving forward as they get a little bit older. But really for basketball, sure, we kind of know a little bit maybe of a freshman, a couple sophomores, and then it's mostly juniors and into seniors that we kind of really start recruiting at that point because so many things change over that time period.
Rick Pitino during March Madness was talking about, like, he's not even looking at high school kids because he needs to fill 3 spots with experienced players. So are you guys at that point, or how does it?
We're closer to that point than we've ever been.
Yeah.
I think what the problem is with the way the transfer portal is played out and what it looks like, especially at our level, there's a lot of really good college players, and it's hard for young guys. And the other problem is the way it works, young guys tend to leave right away. So if I recruit you and you're a freshman and you're not quite ready to play, like most freshmen, but not all, how are you going to feel? And are you going to stay another year, or are you going to leave? Mm-hmm. Well, with the same thing, we could go get that kid at another team to come play for your team in the portal. And I think that's what, Coach Pitino was talking about in that is the value of young guys. It's harder. It's almost like the NBA playing rookies.
So what would you describe the track, like the ideal track right now? Obviously, it can change next week when they change rules, right?
Yeah.
But what would your ideal track be for someone who loves basketball and their goal is to play Division I basketball?
Yeah, so are you saying starting from when? Like they're a high school kid, or they're being recruited? Or
right now, say they're 10, 12, 11 years old.
Yeah.
And just love basketball.
Yeah.
And they envision themselves wanting to play.
I think the biggest thing that young people do, and I think parents, and especially if you haven't been through it, maybe it's your oldest, or you haven't been as involved until now and your kid's going through it, is not focusing enough on the skill and the development and trying to focus more on winning and playing games and being more engaged in that process of what they're doing in the moment versus the long-term goal is just continue to improve. Just continue to get better, and then that stuff all becomes a byproduct of the work and that stuff. Now, it's hard because young kids, they got to have fun with it too. So it's got to be a situation where, you're having fun, but you're also able to work on the skill piece. I think skill is so important if you're trying to get to that level, because that's something that, like, for instance, we evaluate a lot is how skilled are you. There's always going to be a special talent from a athlete that's got God-given abilities that just jump out at you. But the vast majority of people don't have that. And so I think that's where it really comes into play.
Do you see kids have a shot by developing those skills, or is it you get the God-given ability kids who also develop their skills, and then the kids that need to work harder just never make it because they're just never going to be above it?
It's a good question. I think there's a mix of both. Like, some of those God-given ability kids, they come to us and they can't do the most basic fundamental things. They don't know how to throw a pass. They don't know how to dribble effectively. They can't shoot free throws. Like, there's certain things, and that holds them way back, and then they eventually talent catches up to you, whatever level that is.
Right.
You can't out-talent someone. And then you have kids that have no business playing at our level that can be really, really good players because they do all those things. They've worked at it. They understand the game. They love the game. They have great feel for it. They can make shots. They can see things that other people can't. And I think even though they can't dunk and they, can't do some of those other things. So I think you absolutely can. It's all about how dedicated to you are, how much you want to do it, how much, your child wants to do that.
I want you to talk a little bit about your basketball journey, because if I remember correctly, you were a walk-on at the University of Wisconsin.
Yep.
So take us through that process and what your journey was like.
Yeah, I think for me, you had to start when I'm really young. I had 2 older sisters, so I was the youngest of 3. They both played basketball, so they were 4 and 8 years older than I was. My oldest sister got a scholarship to Marquette University, so she played. And my middle sister got a scholarship to Stetson University and ultimately played at an NAI school back home. Both coaches also. But the reason that was important for me is I was the youngest. So when they go to basketball practice, I'm in the gym and I'm just shooting, dribbling, doing all the things that I just wanted to be like my older sisters. Right. And so I was constantly around the game, and then had some really good teachers. I was fortunate to go to camps because my mom worked at Marquette University. So the basketball camp I went to every year, I went to Rick Majerus's basketball camp. So not everybody has access or the ability to do that, but I learned some really good fundamental skills like ball handling. My ball handling was really good. I could really shoot. And so that helped me because even as a freshman in high school, I was only 4'9".
Wow. Okay.
So I was tiny. I was the smallest kid.
I was the smallest kid in the class. I think I was telling them 4'9".
So I was 4'9". I was only a freshman. I was playing JV. I was the smallest of 400 kids in the class. The next year I was on varsity, started at the point guard position at 5'2", and I was 85 pounds. We were the 6th team in the state. We had 2 guys other than myself, play scholarship D1. We had 2 kids play Division II, and myself. And for me, it was always a fight to try to prove somebody else wrong. I was always too small, as everyone said. He can't do it. He's too small. Can't do this because of. And so that was kind of my personal driving force. And so, Bo Ryan was at Milwaukee originally when I was a junior in high school, and they recruited one of my teammates. And he ended up going to Bradley University. And then my senior year, we had a kid that was really, really talented, and they recruited him when he went at Wisconsin. And that kid went to Stanford. So he had seen me play a whole bunch of times. And I really wanted to play at Wisconsin. I was an all-state player, playing in the All-Star game, but I always joked with Coach after eventually making the team that he got stuck with me, even though he wanted the 2 other guys. And my first year, I had some spots I could walk on. They told me I could only be a manager, so I actually started out as a manager my first year at Wisconsin, around the game.
So what does the manager do?
I mean, you do.
You do hear about this kid is the manager, and then they put a uniform on him, and then he's hitting a 3, and it's like,
yes.
So what does the manager of a college basketball team do?
Yeah, I mean, they're the backbone of our program. I always joke the managers now, they're going to come back and they're going to be Fortune 500 CEOs and all, because, I mean, you're getting the water bottles, you're getting the equipment ready, you're cleaning up sweat, you're wiping the floor, you're doing the scoreboard. Sometimes you hop in drills and you have to be a passer or whatever. So you do some of that, but it's none of the stuff you thought you were going to be able to do. You wanted to play and all the things, which was a good experience for me. It was pretty, it's a humbling experience for these guys, but it was very gratifying. I really enjoyed, we had a good group of people, both managers, staff, and players. And then, after a year of that, they had a walk-on spot open up, and they gave me the walk-on spot. So that's when I started that. And then the next year I was on scholarship and played some meaningful minutes in some games, that second year. So that was kind of my journey and how it happened.
You could dunk?
I could not dunk. I touched the rim like once. I don't know if the you know, it was a special day, the door was open, maybe the wind.
You got a little extra wind in your back.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you how small and white our high school basketball team was, because we weren't a very good basketball team. I mean, we were okay, but we were a small school, 160 kids, 9 through 12. So
yeah,
you had 400 in your class. I had 36.
Yeah.
Which we would do a towel dunking contest, because none of us could like dunk with two hands.
Yeah.
Or like we could probably use a girl's ball, but it was more fun because we would be able to do like 360s and stuff, right? So we'd get a towel, just a gym towel, wrap it up into a ball, and then we would have a dunk contest with the towel.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So
easier to grip.
Yeah, easier to grip. You didn't have to worry about that. So I did pull off like a reverse towel dunk one time, but that's
That's pretty good though.
So I could jump up and grab the rim. Never dunked in a game, but that was we had, you know, the tallest kid on our team was 6'6", and he was like the tallest kid in school.
Yeah.
And
I never had a lot of vertical athleticism.
but you had to be really quick.
I was quick. I was
Yeah.
real quick, and I could handle the ball and I could see things and then make an open shot. I think the value that I probably brought also is that I didn't care to score, whereas 90% of
Yeah.
guys care to score. So I can make things happen that just
Now,
by
did you
being
not
out there.
care to score, or just couldn't really score that well?
More so, couldn't really score. Realized that this was my path.
That's how I was. Yeah. It was like the coaches didn't want me to shoot. I was like, I can shoot, man.
Yeah.
But I was a distributor of the ball.
Yeah.
And then my senior year, I was like the most improved player or whatever, but I was also the best defender. So we got in the games. I'm a point guard, and I'm guarding the center because
You were scrappy.
I was the only. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, he's the best athlete on the court,
Yeah.
even though he's 6 inches smaller than this dude.
Yeah.
He's going to guard the center on the other team.
Yeah.
Front the post. You'll be all right. Front the post.
And you probably did. You probably
did.
got into his legs,
Yeah.
and they didn't get the ball in very often.
Yeah. Oh, man, that team was good, though. Basketball is an interesting sport for me because I started playing in second grade.
Mm-hmm.
And with the YMCA, we went to basketball camps. The core group of our grade, we had 5 or 6 players that were good and kind of stuck together, and we ended up playing JV as freshmen instead of playing on the freshman team.
Yeah.
And because we would go to all the camps, and we were really good coming out of 8th grade, and they kind of knew that. But what is interesting to me is like basketball, even though I've played it probably longer than any sport, it wasn't like, it was one of those things like, in Wisconsin, you need something to do in the wintertime.
Yeah,
So you might as well play basketball.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like this, I enjoy it, but it's not like a love.
Yeah.
And I feel like you have to find your love for the game for whatever sport you decide to pursue.
Whatever it is. I think, different parts of the country, it's different. And honestly, recruiting players from different parts of the country, you see there's some big differences, from the Southeast to the Midwest to out West to the East Coast. And I think a lot of it is, like, it's funny you say that about the weather. Like, going into a gym, like, you got to get out of the house and do something. It's a lot harder to do baseball for 7 months of the year in Wisconsin. It's hard to play golf, or, it's some of these sports just don't make a ton of sense. But basketball was always one like that did, and being in those
you can really play it year round, obviously.
Yeah.
Because when we grew up, you played outside all the time.
Yeah.
Basketball, and everyone had a basketball hoop in their driveway. Played basketball all the time. And then obviously in the wintertime, you're playing in the gym.
Yeah.
And now I'm debating whether I put the kids into I've decided no flag football this summer.
Yeah.
But do I do basketball, which I got to get it signed up in the next day or so. But it's so hot here that basketball is now an option.
Yeah, because
it's indoors.
Yeah, yeah. Especially the summertime, which is like that was our baseball season, growing up.
Yeah.
I played baseball and soccer. Soccer was troubling because the weather was always up and down.
And soccer's a primary fall sport
Yeah.
in Wisconsin.
And it's so cold.
Yeah.
It gets,
I remember
by
being
October,
miserable.
it's like.
When did you stop playing soccer?
8th grade.
Yeah,
So
me too.
I played on a select team for about 4 years. I always thought soccer was actually my best sport, and I liked soccer. I just loved basketball more, but soccer made a lot of sense to me. I enjoyed it a lot.
Did you ever play football?
I never played football. I think,
Being 5'9".
I think, I always say that my mom, I don't know if it's true. I think it's true. She wouldn't let me because I was so small, but I always wanted to play because, I'd always play out with my buddies, whether we're, and we'd play tackle or whatever, so I enjoyed it. I always enjoyed running patterns in the backyard with my dad. He'd be throwing the football at me. So I loved football. I'm a big football fan now, but I never really played it.
So how does your experience in playing sports translate to you watching your kids grow up and play sports themselves? Are you fighting against anything when you're watching them?
Yeah, I think I'll tell you the hardest thing for me is finding the balance of pushing them versus not. And I think that's probably something for a lot of parents. My parents, they pushed me, and not unreasonably, but like I had to do an hour of basketball every day, and then it turned into a little bit more plus practice or whatever the situation was. But, at the time as a kid, you're thinking like, I gotta always do this. And that was something that I struggled with all the way up through high school. And then really after high school, when it had been taken away, I was like, whoa, like this is who I am. Like I miss this. But I remember what I experienced in those moments, or at least what I felt. Mm-hmm. And so that's harder for me. And as I'm going through this now, starting with Max and Otto as their second graders, being able to find a way to push them to do some more of it if that's what they want to do, but also when they fight back, how to back off that. And I think that's been a very challenging situation for me because, I don't want them to feel like they're forced to, but I do think, I have 3 boys. Henry's, 3 years old, but I think team sports particularly, there's so much value in it. I at least want them to do it. If it's not their thing, I'm okay with that. I am. But I think it teaches so many other lessons that, like, my kids have privileges that a lot of kids don't have. Sports is a definitive, you won, you lost. You didn't do it right. You can't escape failure, which I think is a great thing. Mm-hmm. And it's a good lesson. And so that, to me, is where I see the value in it the most.
They are great kids.
Thank you.
They are twins, obviously, but they're very identical. Like,
yeah,
my wife's an identical twin. Now, they've obviously grown, and I don't know if when they were in second grade, if they were that much harder to tell apart.
Yeah,
they probably were, but fortunately, you guys put them in different color shoes.
Yeah, we try.
And okay. You switched it up on me this soccer season, and Otto is not wearing orange shoes. Orange Otto. I got it.
That's how we had always done it previously.
So, do they get frustrated when people are calling the wrong name, or are they just used to it by now?
I think they're kind of used to it. I think there's some of it, but not really. I mean, they're so used to it now, whether they're called twin or they both respond to Max and they both respond to Otto.
Sometimes they'll be, I'm Otto.
Yeah.
I'm Max.
Yeah.
I'm like, sorry, bud.
Yeah, it's like, it's very hard, guys. I know.
I got 14 other kids. I'm also trying to remember their names at the same time.
Yeah. So they handle it pretty good, that part of it,
Now, what's their favorite sport?
They'd tell you basketball, and I think they would say it specifically because of me. Mm-hmm. I do think it probably is right now. but they like we just started playing pickleball and stuff
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. Like so they like all the different games. I think they like just playing stuff in general.
Yeah.
They don't really focus on one thing a lot, but basketball would probably be the top thing for them.
They so I've had the pleasure of coaching them in soccer. This is probably our 4th season together. I think so.
Yeah, might be 4.
We had one, and then you guys took a season off with someone else. Then you came back for the last 3, I think. So
Yeah.
But it is, it's exciting to see their growth. Like last season, now they're playing up this season, so it's been a little different experience.
Yeah, it's
been
more of a
harder
struggle for them. Yeah.
But they're hanging in there. Sometimes I look and I say, well, do you really want to be out here? Because
Yeah.
So that's why I asked, are they liking it? But last season, they were starting to blossom because they were in their age group and
Yeah.
scoring goals and getting excited. And so I'm curious about how.
I think this year has been a little bit more of a struggle, but I think, for all the things that I said was good about it, for team sports, this is the part for them that, like, they don't necessarily like that it's not as easy as it was last year for them, right? I mean, they were in the mix. They could do some stuff last year, and they really are struggling this year and keeping up with the pace of everything and what that looks like. And I think it's a good struggle for them, right? And I think that's always the thing you're balancing is you want them to struggle a little bit and get through it without just wanting to not do it anymore, versus, hey, guys, you're getting better. You get to see what you can do now, and you got to keep working at it. Like that's how it works. And you're playing with older kids this year, so it's a little bit different. So I think that has been true this year, and there's been some more frustration in trying to help them through all that and what it looks like.
So back to the coaching and your parents, their coaches, and pushing you to do extra work.
Yeah.
When did that start?
Man, I was on a travel team for basketball. I played up 2 years. I think I was 8. And that was, you're going twice a week practice with the travel team, playing multiple games on the weekend, and then doing our own stuff in between. So I'd say right around 8 years old, I was already kind of being pretty serious about that. And around that time, 3rd, 4th grade, I might have been 4th, 5th grade, I was playing select soccer too. So it was kind of a lot going on.
So you started to touch on it a little bit. How did you feel about your parents pushing you extra?
I think early on, I was probably a little, I liked it, because I could see the results. I was good. I mean, relative to my peers, I was a pretty good player in both sports. So I liked that. And then I think as I got older and there's more social dynamic with friends and other things going on that you might miss because you're going to tournaments every weekend or you're doing, that was probably just an immature trying to figure things out as normal kid stuff. And then I think that's probably more in my middle school years. I started to think like, gosh, it's all the time. I got to do it all the time.
Yeah.
It was only like an hour a day plus, practice or whatever. So it wasn't crazy, but it just felt like a lot.
But you don't regret them doing that?
No. I mean, I think their vision for it, they obviously saw the benefits and what it meant. And then obviously how my life has turned out being in coaching and in sports and basketball, like, the switch happened in college for me where it was just like, I can't believe I ever thought anything different. Like, this is who I am. This is what I enjoy doing.
Yeah. When you were just talking about that, it kind of got me to think about sacrifice, right? Like, I always looked at it, you know this just as well as I do. Growing up in Wisconsin, not a whole lot to do in a small town. Kids start drinking in 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade, and you're just like, what?
Yeah.
No, you can't do that. But don't do that. It's not good. But I looked at it and said, I am not going to be like them. I want more to life. I want to get out. I want to achieve great things. I want to be a Division I athlete. So I made that note of I'm going to sacrifice hanging out with my friends or getting involved with that stuff because I knew that sacrifice would pay off. And it's similar to what you're talking about, is getting your kids to understand you have goals. There are sacrifices that need to be made to reach those goals. This is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's a really good point. And it's a mature thing that you recognize that at a young age too. I think, that was something that all my friends could do things that I couldn't. My parents were strict relative to everyone that I was around and my peers. But I think the one thing also for me is like my family, whether it be my parents or my grandparents, we were all really close. And so I never wanted to disappoint them, right? Like ultimately when it came down to it, I didn't want to get into any of that other stuff because, well, everybody was involved in basketball. We had Sunday dinners as a family. We did a lot of different things. And for that to like be taken away from me because of a foolish decision, that to me, I mean, that was in my mind all the time. And, and I think I give my parents a lot of credit for instilling that in me and making me feel like, hey, you have a lot to lose here if you, choose to do things that you shouldn't be doing.
Right. Now they even have to worry about what you post online.
Yeah. No, that's serious. Like,
yeah,
that's going to be a challenge. I mean, that's going to be coming up in the next few years, trying to figure out how to manage all that.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys, as in your recruiting process, do you have someone combing their socials?
Yeah, I mean, like if I'm recruiting a kid, I'll do that. Search them online, see if you can get interviews or things. You really try to do your research on the type of kid you're bringing in.
So talk about what that looks like for South Carolina basketball. What's that type of kid that you're looking for?
We've been adamant that we want kids that if they do something, you can call someone on their family, whether that's a parent, a grandparent, a brother, a mentor, that they are scared when you give them the information that, hey, they're not doing their work or they're doing something they're not supposed to be on Saturday nights or anything like that. If they have someone like that in their life, you're going to have a chance to be able to coach them. They're going to have a chance to be able to thrive. And it can be anybody, but it's a big part of what we do in recruiting other people like that is, hey, when you come to South Carolina, you're not going to be around a bunch of guys that are doing things they shouldn't do. Clearly they're college students. There's stuff that's going to happen and whatever, but they're good kids. Basketball is at the forefront of what they're doing. Academics is at the forefront of what they're doing. And then you should still enjoy college, but those two things need to matter most.
So it sounds like if there's a disciplinarian at home, then they're coachable. Mm-hmm. You think that's correlates?
And you can always, guys are always going to stray a little bit. They're going to have bad weeks. They're going to, all of a sudden they're not playing and they're going to struggle through that. Well, if you have people that you can talk to on their side and help them through so that when they do waver, you can check them back into place and say, hey, we're still going on the same path. I know we went over here a little bit, but we're going to keep going on this path. We can get right back on it versus guys that go off and they never can find their way back.
Do you guys have any tips or tips of the trade of keeping kids on the path? Certainly this past season was extremely frustrating for all of you.
Yeah.
Like, how do you keep them motivated and focused and not straying when they're going through such difficult seasons?
I think we address it. One thing that we really believe in, and we're going to tell you the truth. So everybody's going to get the truth no matter what. And we're going to make sure that everybody hears everybody else's truth. So there's none of this like, oh, but it's not my fault and it's this guy's fault or it's that guy's fault. I think we keep the thing mostly. And like this year's team, like we struggled. But if the one thing that everybody said when you listen to the commentators and you hear people talk about our team was they never stopped playing hard. They never quit on it, which some teams do. Mm-hmm. And that's because, one, I think the character was good. We had good character with the group. And then the other is we're going to keep learning and get better. Like no matter what the situation is, our day-to-day doesn't change a whole lot on what we give the guys. We're pretty consistent. It's going to be the truth. It gives us an opportunity to grow. We're going to continue to get better even into January and February, where a lot of teams, by the time the season starts, they're more focused on their opponents. We focus a lot on ourselves. So I think all that is why, ultimately we can kind of keep that group together. And I think it starts in the recruiting process, really, is who you're bringing into your program.
High character guys.
Yeah.
Certainly the ability that you guys, the teams, Lamont's teams and your teams have shown since being here are defense, hustle, never giving up. And that makes it fun to watch whether you're winning or losing. And this season it was just like 4 games where it came down to the last possession and you're just like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But that fight
Yeah.
is what former Carolina athletes love to see in whatever sport.
Yeah, it's interesting. At the end of the year, we had a couple people that are pretty close to the program that come to games, season ticket holders. And they're like, "Man, that was a fun season." And you're like, "What do you mean it's a fun season?" We had
Fun for you.
Yeah, we did. But they're like, if you think of all the games at home that you guys played, they were all close games against high quality opponents. And honestly, we didn't finish. And the year before we finished. We were like 2-8 this year in 4-point games or less, or overtime.
Yeah.
The year before we were like 7-1 or 7-2. So you could see just how slim the margins are. And some of that I think is the character of the guys. Is do we have a guy that can step up in that moment and do it? And we had a few the year before. But I think that was, I think our group showed that they still wanted to fight and they still believed it, even in a conference tournament. And then you got to evaluate the season, and then you go into next year after you've evaluated it. What do we need to change in order to do it? Is it drastic changes? Is it small changes here or there? And I think that's what you got to.
How do you guys deal with the pressure? Like obviously, SEC, major college sports, there's a lot of pressure on the coaching staff to win, and I'm rooting for you guys just because I don't want you to move.
Yeah, I think when you've done it a long time, so this is my 14th year in college basketball coaching, 17 altogether. I did 3 in the D League. You end up realizing there's things you can control and things you can't. And if you spend a lot of time worrying about things you can't control, you're going to have a tough time. You're going to be stressed out. You're not going to be good to your players. You're not going to get the results that you want, or the staff is going to be irritable. It's a bad situation. I think you just focus on the thing, and that's kind of what we have done every day. Am I working with a guy? Can we teach? Can we help get him better? What does that look like? Evaluating, reevaluating, then going back teaching some more. So I think that is kind of how you just try to do your job and worry about the situation.
That principle works for life, and it works for coaching kids, and it works for coaching adults, and that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, and I think that's why sports, is so fun. Is that there's so many life lessons in sports. I mean, I'm still learning every day, right? I'm still growing every day, and I think the lessons that it's taught you and what it's like to work and what does that look like? What's the process look like? How do you improve at something? I think there's so much value in that.
So you guys have built seemingly a great culture at South Carolina, and it's one of like hard work and grittiness. And now with the way the portal works, you're transforming your team, all new players virtually every single year. Mm-hmm. And it's very similar to what we do in youth coaching, where you show up and there might be half of the team you've never seen before.
Yeah.
You don't even know who they are. You're learning their names for the first time.
Yeah.
And you want to build a culture. How do you do that and do it quickly and get people to get the kids to buy into what that is?
Well, it's a good question, because it's transformed a lot in my profession, and obviously in youth sports, like you said. Sometimes you can get a core group that you can take through, but sometimes you can't, and you just have a group of kids. I think the number one thing is, I think you can overdo it. right? And that's something that we really try to not do, especially when you have a whole new group.
How do you overdo it?
You're trying to get everything in quickly all the time, and it's just too much information for young people. And we have it at our level. It's a real problem. I mean, you should see. I mean, it's very basic. The summertime, we get our guys for 8 weeks. We do very basic things, and then we let them get used to playing with each other and developing offensive chemistry. Like that, you could go in and you could say, okay, we got to put in 10 plays, and then we got to put in a press, and then we got to put in a zone, and then we got to, but in case they do that, we got to have all our out-of-bounds plays in. And then, well, one, they're not going to remember any of it, not going to be good at any of it. And then what does that even look like for your group? And I think in youth sports, it's really important, again, is what is your skill level at, and can you develop skills that can help you maybe where they're at right now? Like Max and I've really tried to focus on, can you dribble quickly and make a layup going at a speed that's going to happen in a basketball game or not?
Can you dribble a soccer ball and kick it?
Exactly.
Without
Like just
falling over.
Just simple things. And it's a tough task, right? You could do that all.
We scrimmaged on Wednesday.
Yeah.
We had a couple misses.
That's what I mean. You could do that every single practice on the youth soccer team and still have guys not be able to do it at the end of the. So I think but that's the next step. And as someone that's done it and coached a lot, okay, once they get to this step, then they can get to this step. And I think sometimes we try to go to this step, and this step. They're still not even here yet.
Right.
And I think that's a big thing that we do. And we keep things very simple.
So do you feel like when you keep it simple and allow them to play with each other, that's what creates the bonds of the culture and the team sense of team?
Yeah.
So you can take 7 random dudes and put them together and allow them to basically, like little kids, you put them out on the playground and just let them play.
Yes.
And they will bond naturally.
I think that'll help. For us, it's a little different because we go through a recruiting process. Sure. And in the recruiting process, a lot of what we tell them helps build the chemistry. For instance, we can't tell you, well, you're going to start and play 40 minutes, and you're going to start, and we tell all 13 guys they're going to start and play 40 minutes. Well, you're going to have 8 guys unhappy at least.
And then you're not telling the truth.
And then you're not telling the truth. And now what does that chemistry look like?
Yeah.
Right? So we do it from the recruiting process to begin with. And I think that also, laying the foundation in youth sports, I would imagine it'd be similar, just being able to say, hey, everybody's going to play a little bit in this position or a little bit in that position, which you may not like, but we're going to, we got to work together on some of these things, So I think that all can help maybe the process.
Setting the expectations for sure. I know. So like in baseball, we have fall is the developmental season. Mm-hmm. So as a coach, you try to let kids play different positions. You rotate them a lot more. Yes, you're keeping score and you're trying to win, but it's not as serious, right? There's no playoffs. It's just we got to develop the skills. In the spring, then it transforms into we're trying to win every game. There's a playoff. There's an all-stars. There's an all-star season after that. So I find setting the expectations, even for 6, 7, 8-year-olds, to say, look, you guys aren't playing in the infield if you can't catch.
Yeah.
Right? I can't put you at first base, even though you ask me every single practice and every single game to play first base when you can't catch the ball.
Yeah.
So setting those expectations, I think, is key to that.
And, with Max and Otto, it's if when they get frustrated, I think as a parent, we can also help in that situation, because I think youth coaches have a lot on their plate now. It's not that easy to do. I mean, there's a lot of thanklessness to it, right? Of which I really appreciate everything you do. But I always say that, like, are you mad? Well, if you're mad about it, well, why don't we go out and work on it? Versus going to the coach, let's say, or going to whoever it is and saying, well, I want my son to play here. Well, okay. Well, here's the things we've got to work on. Like, guys, we got to work. If you want to do the thing, that's great. I'm all for it. Let's practice. Let's practice and do it. And if not, well, then you're going to have to figure that out at some point. You know, you can't be upset about if you don't want to work at it a little bit. And not everybody wants to work at it, and that's okay too. But you don't just get something because you want it. And I think that's a lesson that we all should be teaching our kids. Just because you want something doesn't mean that you get it.
Yeah.
You know?
We do have an entitlement issue with our society, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's, you know, that's we deal with it all the time, and it's like we always tell them we're going to be transparent. We're going to tell you the truth. If you want if you want to ask the question, just you got to take the answer. I mean, it's
don't ask questions you don't want the answer to.
Exactly, and we're going to be truthful on it, and we're always going to work to get better at it. We're not saying, we're just telling you where it is right now, and here's the things. And I think that's an important thing for people, is not a lot of people get the truth anymore.
You're going to get the truth here at the Rub Some Dirt On It podcast. Thank you so much, Tanner, for being here with me today. I end every podcast with a trivia question.
Okay.
And I'm going to put it in your wheelhouse.
Oh gosh.
Oh boy. It is a NCAA tournament, basketball tournament question. Okay. What is the lowest seed, and who was the team to ever win the NCAA tournament?
I think it was NC State.
No. It was Villanova, was an 8th seed in 1985.
Really?
Can you believe that? 1985, now 40 years ago.
Okay.
That's the lowest seed? No one. And there's 68 teams in the.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know. That was a good one. Is that Raleigh Massimino? I think might have been the.
That is a trivia question. I don't know. I kind of look these up as I'm coming in to say, okay, basketball. Let's give Tanner a good one.
Yeah, give him one that I could make it. That was a good one.
Here's an easier one.
Okay.
Which college program has won the most championships, NCAA basketball championships?
I think it was UCLA.
How many?
11?
Yes. See?
Yeah, there we go.
I had to give you the hard one first.
Yeah.
Tanner, thank you so much for being here. Be sure to like and subscribe if you are enjoying the Rub Some Dirt On It podcast. I'm Coach Brian, and I'll see you next time.